part of the work that you cannot escape is building your capacity for tension. My personal perspective of why relationships feel so hard is because we don't have healthy models of what healthy love looks like. Most of us are looking at the models that our caregivers or our parents gave, or they never saw their parents fight. And so they think when fighting happens, it's bad. Or you're being raised on Disney, Hollywood rom-coms, or social media kind of hashtag couple goals. And there's nowhere in culture where you're looking and you're actually seeing this is what healthy love looks like. I get way more nervous when a couple comes to me and says they're not fighting because I know something is under the surface that's not being dealt with. One of the things that I think is really important to note about healthy long-term love, if you really want to be in a healthy long-term relationship, is that.
Baya, how are you doing? And thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm doing awesome. I'm so excited for this. I can't wait for the conversation.
This morning, I was having my daily huddle that I do, or it's weekly huddle. And we were talking to everybody, and there's, 15, 20 people on a Zoom. And I'm like, hey, we're going to have a conversation this morning on relationships. What's interesting to you? What would be interesting if you were listening to a podcast? What do you want to know more about? And I mean, the questions I got were amazing. So I gave you the teaser. Here's some of the things they said. Number one, they asked, why is it in certain cultures, arranged marriages are still popular and yet tend to be so much more successful than traditional marriages today? And it's mind-boggling, and people couldn't understand. And then one of the single moms said, I'm going to be honest with you, I would love to arrange marriages for my two daughters because I feel like I would know better. And then the next person said, I don't know about the arranged part, but I definitely think it's longevity, and the conversation progressed. So I'll pause, and I'm super interested in any concepts that come out of this.
Oh, I love that this is where we're starting. Well, I mean, to the point of arranged marriages, actually, I think part of my own personal opinion about part of why I think that they work in some ways. There's some things that don't, of course, but um, you're not basing attraction off of chemistry. So you need to figure out how to build and develop love for someone who you would not necessarily choose for yourself. And so you're not going off of a chemical overload in your brain that's saying, choose this person, attach yourself to this person. You actually have to develop that. It takes effort. Chemistry doesn't take effort. Listen, we go through stages of relationships, and the first phase is, what we all know is the honeymoon, or I call the merge, right? This is like, it doesn't take us effort. This is like all our chemicals are doing the work for us. We don't need to do anything. And for people in arranged marriages, that's not the case. Right. And culturally, a lot of times, if you're in an arranged marriage, divorce is also much harder. That's not something that's as socially acceptable. So getting out also isn't on the table. Now, when we look at, our American culture and how easy it is to get out of relationships and how much choice we have, there's the impact of choice too. Having so many choices is not necessarily a good thing. And we can see that with the divorce rate. Like, it's just, 50% of people divorce, way more living in unhappy marriages and relationships. Like, we're not doing so hot when it comes to relationships. So looking at other methods that are actually working with people, for people, when you're building love off of something that's actually more around values, more around similarity. And I'm not saying that's the best way. I'm not saying it's the right way, but it is a way, and it seems to work for many people.
Well, shared interests and values can be a core component to any great relationship. I mean, it's why so many extramarital affairs happen at work, because it's two people working together that understand all the day in and day out stuff that's going on. And again, I'm not rationalizing why it's a good thing. I'm just saying that it's built on those liked commonalities. And there are so many things that when you're building a life around a vision that you both have, and maybe the attraction comes later, it is an interesting dynamic, although one I'm not familiar with. So I got married at in my early 20s, my wife was my sister's best friend. I'd known her and we'd known each other since originally in high school. So we're talking about, 12, 13 years old and 14, 15 years old. And, when we got married, I think it was like we're almost like rushing to the next thing over and over again, but we were so aligned in what we wanted that all the challenges we were facing, which were mostly growing up, it was mostly me growing up and getting comfortable with myself, her growing up and getting comfortable with herself, and having to work through those challenges, like the stuff that most people work through nowadays by themselves or through multiple relationships. We got to work through together. And there's wins and losses in that are challenging, but it was definitely a different dynamic than say an arranged marriage or even one that starts at 30 or 40 like a lot of them do today.
And to the point of similarities and differences, I often find when I work with couples, they're wondering, are we too different? Have we grown apart? And I find that there are kind of two overarching categories. Of course, there are more, and I'm just, these are uh,
Off the cuff.
no, the word, God, I'm telling you, in pregnancy, my brain pulling out words has been so hard. Anyway, no, they're like an overarching theme that is not meant to be for everybody, but they're common. So here are the two categories I find a lot of people in. One is the category of polarity, where you're attracted to each other because of your differences. And this is like a lot of sparks, a ton of chemistry. Like it is, especially out of the gate, it can just be like fireworks. And in these dynamics where people are so different, the pain is going to be really different. Then, if you're in the second category of people who are drawn together because of how similar they are, because of they grew up in the same town, to your point, like they grew up in the same town, had their families knew each other, they had the same interests, whatever it is, those are going to be really different. They actually probably will struggle with polarity. Those couples are often the ones coming to me and being like, we're not that attracted, like nothing's wrong, we don't fight a lot, but we also don't really have sex, like there's just, whereas the other couples are coming to me and they're like a storm of conflict and but they might have a really hot sex life. It's, but these two, it's different kinds of growth and different kinds of pain that people often find themselves in, and both are wondering, to your point of loneliness, are we the only ones going through this? Like, are relationships supposed to be this hard and have this much fighting? Or are relationships just supposed to be calm, but I'm not all that attracted to my partner and I don't really find them that hot? Like, I don't find myself wanting to jump their bones. Right. And so we commonly then try to assess for ourselves what is healthy, what is normal, and am I in either of those categories based on whatever suffering I'm in?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it's interesting because I I look back at starting out, and I think there was this similarity that created obviously an immediate attraction, but then there was also the polarity of our relationship being so different. So she's more introverted and I'm more extroverted. I'm extremely high passion and high intensity at everything. And so putting those things together, what happened when we had kids, and I talk about this a lot, is our second child comes along and I think that I'm doing all the right things by taking the older one all the time. And then, we have this moment where she's like, you're taking the fun one. I'm doing all the work. And I thought, I was going to work every day and coming home and then doing things with my older son. And like, I thought I was doing my part and we were just missing each other. There's this disconnection when you first have kids that is really hard because you almost lose your identity for a very short amount of time. And you have to find it not just together, but alone too. And so we're on the quick version is we're on a trip to the Caribbean. Like I forced us to go on these trips. And it's my youngest is probably 6 months old now. And my wife leans in and we're heading to Tortola, I think, to get on a boat for something in the Caribbean, the British Virgin Islands. And she leans in and she goes, "This is our ROM week." And I'm like, I don't know what ROM is, but it sounds awesome. And she goes, "It's rekindle our marriage." And I, I'm a deep thinker, so immediately I'm thinking of, that's a great idea. We're going to build on this. We're going to develop it. I like the idea. So we adapted that mentality, and really it was a reconnection. It was a relearning about each other. It was trying to find all the things you just talked about, but make sure that we're actually aligned along the way. And we started doing that every 6 months at the least. And when
Mm.
you find the relationship faltering or going into some of those like roommate things, which are really easy to do when you've been together a long time, I found it to be like the disconnection that we needed to reconnect. So does that make sense?
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? This is different, and by the way, the word I was thinking was overgeneralization.
Okay, good
So
word.
I just needed to say that. I needed to say
Overgeneralization.
that,
Got it.
overgeneralization, because of these 2 groups. Anyway, so I just had to say that because it popped into my head. I was like, "Oh, that's what I meant." Okay. Um, it reminds me of a concept that that has really helped me and a number of my clients, just this frame around you have 3 poles in a relationship. You have you as an individual, your partner as an individual, and then you have the third entity, which is your relationship. So there are 3 poles, and the goal is, for me, this is how I think about relationships. When I think about relationships, I think the goal is what are the understanding what are the relationship needs, which are going to be very different than your individual preferences, or they might be very different at different moments in your life of what your individual preferences are. So if I want to be out late, actually, I'll just my wife is she's the extrovert in our dynamic. I don't know that I'm introverted, but I cannot keep up with her. She wants to stay out late, hang out with people, be the last one at the party. And I'm like, a 9 o'clock bedtime just feels like exactly what I want. If we're doing the thing that I want all the time, there's no way that Emmy, my wife, is going to feel good about that. And if I am also doing the thing that she wants, there's just no way I'm going to be able to sustain myself. In fact, we tried at the beginning of our relationship. I tried to keep up with her, and I was like, "Oh, there is no way this is going to work out if I keep doing this." I would stay out late with her, and then I would be resentful that I stayed out because now I'm tired and blah blah blah. What we ended up needing to do was figure out what a meet in the middle, the relationship need was, where I'm not going out with her sometime. Like sometimes I might not go, but like how do we actually navigate being in social dynamics where both of us get fed, where both of us walk away feeling like that was, and what we came to was actually not something that I think either of us wanted or would have thought of, which is some nights she actually does go out without me. Like but in the morning, we make sure that we're waking up, we're being really sweet, we're like catching up, right? So I don't feel kind of left out, which is one of
Right.
my wounds.
Where the
And
carryover,
then
where it carries over, because that her
totally,
activity of going out carries over into later morning, no connection, missed time.
exactly,
So that's where a lot of couples might miss that.
exactly. Or we're going out together and then we leave separately. I go home early. And at the beginning, there was a whole bunch of tension around this. Like, I really wanted us to leave together. So, but when we actually look at what serves the relationship, actually, the thing that we needed most was a little bit of differentiation. We're 2 women. It's easy to like be hand in hand, BFF, like feel like we need to do everything together. But really what needed to happen was a little bit of differentiation where we started to feel safe, which did not come without facing a bunch of tension in the meantime, where we eventually started feeling safe with Emmy going out by herself, me spending weekends by myself if I needed to recharge, or us going to an event where she stayed out late and I came home early. And that was like neither of those are going to be things that at the beginning of our relationship we're signing up for and we're like psyched about. No, no, it's not. But I think if you can start to me when I consider like a ROM exercise, understanding what the relationship vision or what the relationship needs or requests are, and knowing that both of you are at the service of your relationship, that then starts to take individual preferences and it starts to actually, just to be like how I really wrap my head around this is it starts to become a little more spiritual. Like it starts to make the idea of how we choose our partner become a little more like, okay, so the last thing I want to do is have my wife stay out later than I do. What capacity is that building inside of me that I would draw in a partner who is so committed to staying till the end of the night that she's not gonna be like, "Yeah, baby, let's go home. I wanna go home with you every night. That's my dream. That's my dream." That's not what's gonna happen with her. But to me, this is like the surrender into there is like the universe has brought her to me because there is something here for me in the tension that is our disagreements. That's where our conflict shows up. That's where our differences show up. And how is that actually developing me into the person that I actually want to see myself become more of? In this circumstance, an example would be like maybe I want to be more independent. I want to feel actually like I can handle the tension of differentiation of us doing different things. I want to be able to handle that better. And the way that I'm gonna do that is by facing the tension and then starting to understand my own capacity is bigger than I thought it was. Those are all things that are turning me into more of who I want to become. And the only way we get there is if I'm not digging my heels into my individual preference and I'm actually looking towards the relationship, looking towards this third entity and saying, how are you here to actually support my own growth and development?
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And what's funny is I think summarizing that early on in our relationships, we're constantly looking for what we need instead of what we have to give. And, looking back on 23 years of marriage, in the very beginning, I think I was super frustrated that my wife was always wanting to go to bed early. She's gone to bed early as long as I've known her. She went to bed early even when we were younger and going out, she'd be like, "All right, well, you can go out. I'm just not going." And it was when you start working and you start having very limited time to connect, that becomes a major challenge. So I'm like, "Hey, why don't we watch a movie? Why don't we?" And it's like, no, there's no time. If you come home at 6:30 or 7 at night from work and then you're in bed by 8:30, like that's early, super early, right? But how I look back on the giving is that I'm so all on all the time that as I've gotten older, I go to bed more often closer and aligned to her. It's not that early, but it's much earlier as I've gotten older. It's made our mornings better. It's made us more
Mm.
connected in our daily rituals and what we do. And there are things that have really enhanced the relationship from taking those steps to meet her where she's at. And then I also have many times booked a trip. She genuinely will complain about going on the trip all the way up until we're on the plane. And then we get on the plane and she's like, "Oh my god, you so know what I needed. This is awesome." And then we got to Greece and she goes, "I didn't know this was all going to be on the water. This is a perfect place." Like she hadn't even like looked at where we were going, what we were doing, but it was me pushing us to get outside that comfort zone that also allowed her, and she gave in too. There are little things what we're talking about, and then there are big things where, if you're an adventure taker and if your partner's an adventure taker and you just never want to go anywhere, that is really, really hard. So we have to look at how
Yeah.
we can bend and meet each other in those places to really develop that relationship. And the older I get, the easier these things are to see. And the less you have to stand on a mountain to fight it. Like when we were younger, and I'm sure you went through this too, you stand on the mountaintop on like the dumbest things. This is just it's important to me. And it's so stupid because the reality is it wasn't more important than you guys reconnecting or staying connected.
Well, it comes to the fact that we all live in a when we're in partnership, we live in a relational ecosystem. One of my colleagues, Terry Real, talks about what he names enlightened self-interest, which is this idea that the thing that you're so stubborn about that you really don't want to give into, or that fight that you really want to win. Well, guess what? When you win and they lose, you both lose because you have to wake up to them. You have to go to bed with them. You're the one who lives in the house with them where you have to deal with being in tension. So we make decisions based on enlightened self interest. I have to live with this person. I got to go to bed next to them. I have to eat dinner with them. So if I win and they lose, I'm gonna have to deal with the repercussions of that, and that's gonna feel terrible, and I'm the one who has to deal with that. Enlightened self-interest. I love that concept because it's like because I think a lot of us, when we think of bending, we're like, "But I don't want like, I don't wanna give up parts of myself. Well, I don't wanna" there could be some real stubbornness around what it means to bend or what it means to, shift perspective or what it means to bow down in a fight or like let it go or whatever that thing that's really hard for well, why do we do it? It's not just for our partner. It's not just for our relationship. It's because probably what we want is to live in a home that's a little more peaceful, where people are like a little more joyful and not mad at each other all the time. And your role in that is a big one. It's the only one that you can control. You can't control what your partner's going to do. But if you start to zoom out and say, okay, what's enlightened self-interest look like here? Because I've got to actually live with this person, all of a sudden your decisions start to, look a little different.
So true. How often are we pulled into arguments that we don't even believe are important as well? I mean, there are so many times where someone might be having some level of an uncomfortability with something simple like you said you were going to be home at this time and you're not, and now you're not, and it's frustrating. And so there's the you feel that tension building up, and that's another thing that like early on when I'm super young versus getting older is that now I see these things and I'm like, okay, this is I'm not even we're not going down this path. We're both just what I did was I didn't communicate properly that I was going to be later. Instead, I just did what I wanted to do and I'm coming in when I'm ready to come in. And I'm making it a simple example. Um, Instead of in the old days where it was like it was more about like why do I have to be tracked? Why does it have to why do I have to be in at a certain time? Like, and we're talking about dinner time, folks. Not we're not talking about like going out till 2:30 in the morning. That's not my style. But I think the point I'm getting at is we get drawn in. You talk a lot about connection and reconnecting, and you help a lot of couples that are have maybe been connected and they're trying to refine that thing that pulls them both together. And I think sometimes on the surface, I would imagine it's just little things that we let get to us that we have to let go. And all of a sudden, it gets to some of those things that we wake up and we go, I can live with her. We can do this. I need to live with her. This is the important thing that we have to get through so I can wake up tomorrow and feel good instead of starting another day where I'm angry or upset or uncomfortable.
Well, I actually think your example is a good one because it's common enough that and we can translate it to a number of things, which is one mistake that a lot of us make, I'm guilty of this too, is that we keep the argument about the content, right? So the argument is, "Hey, stop coming home late. Why are you coming home this late?" And then you feel controlled. You're like, "Wait, why are you tracking me? Like why you're not the boss, like don't be my mom," right? Whatever story we make up about that. But if we actually get underneath the content to the pain might look different for different people around why coming home late is so hurtful. For one person, it could be, hey, my parents used to say they would be home at a certain time and then not come home. And I was left to deal with my siblings and put them to bed, and I had homework to do, and I was in junior high, and I didn't know what to I like, the kind of quintessential parentified adult, and so or parentified child. Now, I'm in a relationship, you come home late, and it's not actually you being late, it's like you not keeping your word, all of a sudden to me hits that part of me that is way, way younger, hits the part of me that is like and if I can get that, if I can get to that place of, okay, this is probably not just about you being late. If it was just about you being late, I might find my trigger being at like on a scale of 1 to 10, like a 4 or below. And then we can probably just deal with it. Hey, baby, can you just not come home that late? Can you do like, and then you're like, yeah, no, I get it. I said, right. It's just can be cleaned up way easier. But if your trigger level is kind of 5 or above, oftentimes that's historical. There's a line, I don't remember who says this, but if it's hysterical, it's historical, which I love because there's a way where if something like that is really deeply hurts you, the idea of just moving on is going to be really hard. Just letting go, that's going to be really hard. If it hits something in you that's like, hey, or I was just in a relationship before this where they were going out and they were lying when they were out. Or, it could be any number of things that is happening way beneath the surface. And if I bring that to you, again, this is also enlightened self-interest, by the way, to work this muscle. If I can say, no matter what I'm bringing to you, my goal is to get beneath the content into the pain and keep that pain focused on me without blaming, shaming, or making you wrong. I have such a higher likelihood of you being able to meet the thing that I want, which is likely being understood, validated, connection, any number of things. So what often happens is we'll stay on content. Hey, I can't believe you came home late. That was like you said you were going to be home earlier. It really pisses me off. And now you go into defense, or you go into shutdown, or you go into whatever your protective mechanism that's just like, yo, I didn't like that was an innocent mistake here. I had to pick up the kids and I didn't realize that takeout was going to say whatever. Like, but if you then all of a sudden go, you're just bypassing the part of the conversation that is most likely to go sideways,
Right.
the content.
Because it really wasn't about the content. It wasn't about that in the first place. It wasn't about being late. It was about what that person felt in this example, about childhood or historical perspective, or it was about feeling controlled or whatever it was. It's so much deeper a lot of times, but it's the comment. We have to get to a point where we're not triggered by those comments, and it can be unique for sure. What are
Well,
Go ahead.
can I just pause on that
Yeah.
because I think that's really important. This idea of not being triggered, I think is one that it's a really tricky one because part of why my personal perspective of why relationships feel so hard or can feel so hard is because we don't have healthy models of what healthy love looks like. So most of us were not taught by our families. Like most of us are looking at the models that our caregivers or our parents gave and we're like, I want to do the exact opposite of that. Or they never saw their parents fight. And so they think fighting is when fighting happens, it's bad. Or you're being raised on Disney movies, Hollywood rom-coms,
Right.
or social media kind of hashtag couple goals. And there's nowhere in culture where you're looking and you're saying, and you're actually seeing, this is what healthy love looks like. But healthy love looks like conflict. I get way more nervous when a couple comes to me and says they're not fighting because I know something is under the surface that's not being dealt with. We're two or more people with nervous systems that are going to be sensitive to different things. There's no way that we're not going to be running up against those things in our most intimate dynamics. So, this idea of what we do with a trigger is so important because the outside world has not shown us, oh, this is what it takes to stay in love. It's only shown us this is what it looks like to get to find love. Hollywood, Disney, whatever. Or this is what I don't want modeled from what I've seen around me in my neighborhood or my families or my friends'
Right.
families or whatever. And so one of the things that I think is really important to note about healthy long-term love, if you really want to be in a healthy long-term relationship, is that part of the work that you cannot escape is building your capacity for tension. And when we live in a frictionless virtual world, that's like you can date, you can order groceries, you can order shoes online, and you don't like, and it's only going to get more frictionless, by the way. Now we can have AI girlfriends and boyfriends, right? Like we're now in an environment where we are being served like we don't have to work at all for it. I can just think of a brand and then it shows up on my algorithm. But that doesn't mimic the friction of real life relationships. So it's quite confusing to our brains. It's like, why isn't this online thing? Like, I could do everything. So, like, everything feels so easy over here in my life over here. Now, when I'm dealing with you, partner, you're just really hard. This is really hard. Probably means it's too hard. Probably means this is too hard. Maybe we should get a divorce. Um, but part of what we haven't trained ourselves to do is build capacity. Like, I think about cold plunges, for instance, and I'm like, the first time I ever got into a cold plunge, I was in there for 10 seconds and then I was like, get me out of here. It took me weeks to build up to even a minute. It was like every day, just like a little incremental. Blah, blah. To me, that's like relationships. It's like we need a practice ground where we can mess up. We need arenas where we can start to build our capacity for tension and not freak out, meaning we either shut down, we make it about ourselves, we blame the other person, we yell, we escape, we numb, all of our eject button mechanisms, where we can actually learn to be with our nervous systems for the very normal, very healthy relational tension that is necessary to face in long-term healthy love.
Yeah, it's a
I had what well, I'll just say this last thing and then I'll
no,
let you talk.
please.
One of my other colleagues one of another colleague who I love, her name is Annie Lala. She's a love coach and she says
I
something
know Annie.
that,
Annie's in Genius Network with me,
oh, great.
and knows Joe Polish really well, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
she totally
yeah,
does. Yeah. So Annie's a dear friend. And she was talking the other day and she was like, you know, we have this idea that relationships are like going to the spa. Like we think love, like that's what love is. It's like going to the spa. But that's not what love is. Love is going to the gym. And you're lucky if your gym has a spa. Like some gyms have spas, but you're not going to the spa. You're going to the gym and then you get to go to the spa in the gym. But we have it all reversed. Like we think that we're going to like we're falling in love, we're going to the spa. And then when it's not the spa, we think love is wrong. So we change partners or we blame ourselves or we blame our partners and then we remain in the power struggle for, by the way, most of our relationship, which is where most relationships end up actually is, when they leave the merge, they come into the power struggle and then they're there for the duration of their relationship because we have no idea what healthy long-term love actually takes to be in and have the stamina for. And that's not our fault. It's just culture never showed us. Our families never showed us. Nobody taught us that healthy love takes a lot of effort. And the hope is that that effort builds you into, this is where the third pole comes in, this is where my spiritual kind of lens comes in, that builds you into a version of yourself that you could not have even guessed was in store for you when you build that capacity. Like this person who is inside of you waiting to be emerged out of this chrysalis into, like, I didn't know I had that stamina. I didn't know I could climb Everest. I thought that all I could do was walk on the treadmill for a few miles, but now I know I can climb Everest. And if I know I can climb Everest, I have a whole ton of confidence in myself that I didn't have before. I see myself completely differently, which means I walk through the world completely differently. And that is the gift of the tension of relationships. That's the gift of our partner's complaints about us is if you pick a partner that you actually trust on a cellular level, has like, even if things are really hard, has kind of got your back, and who uh who is a safe bet, because there's hard that makes you smaller and makes you disappear. I will say in that engagement, I was getting smaller and smaller and becoming less of myself and trying to manage more. And I was like a shell of myself after leaving that relationship. With Emmy, my wife, things can be hard for sure. Our relationship is not a walk in the park. But when we go through tough things and I look at it through this lens of building my capacity, I'm becoming more of who I want to become inside of conflict, inside of the tension that's in our relationship. So I want to be very clear that there are some manipulative relationships, relationships that have coercion, relationships that are unsafe. And I am not talking about those relationships. You know you're in one of those relationships because you disappear. You start second guessing yourself. You start questioning your intuition. You start, those are. But if you're in one that is ultimately like it might be hard, but you've chosen a safe enough partner to do hard with, like that is, I hate to say it, but like that's relationship.
Yeah, and I love the analogy of the gym because what's funny is I'll go back to your cold plunge. I have a cold plunge, I use it every day, and I never look forward to getting into it, ever. I never go, "Oh my god, I can't wait to get in the cold plunge." But every single time that I do it and I get out, I feel great about what I accomplished. And going to the gym is the same way. It's that consistency, it's showing up. It's sometimes you just feel good because you're committed to something. If you're committed to something and you show up to the gym and you're committed, even though it sucks, even though it hurts, even though you're going to feel worse when you leave sometimes physically, but mentally you always feel better. There's so many things you build on, and a relationship is really interesting because it's a lot of the same mechanisms. Like you're having to work through the very tension you're talking through, and that's not easy. That's not easy. It's
It,
also not easy to go into that historical perspective and start to understand a little more about yourself. Sometimes those triggers are triggers because we haven't gone through and done the work on ourself that we need to and the other person deserves. And that's a really big benefit too.
Totally. There another couple of colleagues, Brian and Jennifer, they talk about something that, to your point of commitment, I think is really interesting. It's just a different way than most people frame relationships, and it's just one way to think about relationships, whether or not it's right. What they talk about is that for most of us, we have a fixed identity and a flexible commitment. And in relationships, what if we flipped that? What if we had a flexible identity and a fixed commitment? Again, this is all on the assumption that you have chosen somebody who is safe enough to do this work with. But if that's the underlying assumption, then their complaints become your doorway to your most evolved self. And as long as you are open to that identity shifting over and over and over again, but your commitment stays solid, your commitment's like, I'm in this, I'm not going anywhere. And then that also allows more safety in the dynamic to do the hard, deep, triggering work because you know that no one's going anywhere. And it's going to take, these things take a long time. Like this is slow going stuff. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get it perfect. I don't know if anybody ever gets it perfect. Like that's just, we're humans. But if you know that you're not going anywhere and the commitment is fixed, but both of your identities are somewhat malleable, that you can have a complaint about me. I mean, my wife, that one of my wife's complaints that's been the hardest for me to wrap my head around and is probably one of the most like my evolutionary path right now continues to be, hey, I need you to regulate by yourself without me there first. Now, I have a whole thing about co-regulation and why co-regulation is important. But actually what she's picking up on is the part of me that doesn't know if I can regulate fully without another person in the room with me. That's based off of my history. That's based off of not being attuned to as a kid. That's based off of like, a bunch of things that are still healing inside of me. And because her, by the way, it's not like she said this nicely a bunch of times. It's like her complaint was big and loud and hurt and it was like not fun to hear. But another way to think about it, this is another Annieism. She says, our partner's complaints, if we can just like, they're probably going to have pretty bad bedside manner. And it's our job to translate that bedside manner into what their wish actually is for us. And I can literally see through Emmy's complaint about my ability or inability to regulate at a given moment and her literal boundary of like, oh, if you bring this to me, like she shuts down. There's just it doesn't get anywhere. I don't get what I want. I can see how I'm going to be a better mother. I can see how I'm going to be a better friend to myself, a better practitioner, a better blah, 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 right? This is all like, but it's coming wrapped in a pretty intense complaint that doesn't make me feel good at the beginning, right? It's like, but this is the work.
I
It's love. Love isn't outside of this. This is what love looks
Yeah,
like.
it's a verb.
Yeah,
I think it's C.S. Lewis. Someone said today, C.S. Lewis says, "Love is a verb," and it's a great quote because it is an action. And
yeah.
when it's funny when you look at the old episodes of American Idol, they used to air all the kids that couldn't sing, and it was like the best part of the show, and it was also the most painful part of the show. And I always used to think about the parents that allowed their kids to do that because somebody was either not telling them the truth about what really mattered or somebody was completely not seeing the truth. And when you talk about your partner and you talk about the things that are the hardest to communicate, if our people are coming at it, if I am better together, if in my marriage, if Adrian gives me guidance or advice and it's coming from a place of love and wanting me to be a better version of myself, it's not always something I want to hear. And it's definitely not something I always receive well, but it's also something that when I do separate and start to regulate and understand, I can make a better version out of that. And there's lots of times that I say that too. I'm like, hey, I'm not telling you this because it's not coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place where for us to be as strong together and for you to be as strong as I know you are outside of us, this is something that's going to make us both better. And there are times where we have those conversations and they are a little deeper, but I think that to your point, it's good to know. And I love the bedside manner because your bedside manner is not usually the best with the people you love the most. It is really
It's usually
interesting.
not.
Yeah, it's typically not, and in theory it should be, but the reality is, it's just not because you're comfortable, because you let down your guard, because you're not playing a part. You're not doing what the world expects of you. You're just letting go sometimes. And there's imperfection in letting go around someone that you love.
Also just to name, sometimes our partners are going to be able to come to us and say, "Hey, this is what I see for you. Like this is like I'm there's something bigger here or there's something I want for you. This could make us both better." Other times that's not how your partner's going to see it. Other times they're going to see it as their own limit. They're going to see it as their own boundary. They're going to see it as something that they just actually can't be a yes to. And in that, we're needing to translate how is their limit actually also for me? Even if it feels very much like it is not for you. How is it actually for me? And if it's not, and sometimes it might not be, then where do you go? Then what's the next conversation? Then maybe there's a boundary on your end, right? There's that, like, it all leads to me, the most effective couples therapy is when people walk in and they're like, this rarely happens, by the way. Most people use couples therapy as like a drop off zone for their partner to,
Yeah.
they're like, here, deal with my
I'm
messed
quitting.
up
I'm
partner.
quitting on this person. Can you figure them out?
Yeah, yeah, fix them. Here's my partner, fix them. But when two people can come into couples therapy and be like, here's the thing that's really hard for me. This is my work. This is the thing. And the other person's like, yeah, here are the things that are really hard for me. This is my work. th- It's like magic. Let me tell you, that's like 0.001% of people ever do that. But if you can hold that for yourself, that the only person you can control is you, that the more we try to control our partner and change our partner and make them into something different, we can have a complaint. We can hopefully translate the complaint into a request because our partner's going to be able to hear that. But this is like shifting focus from them, what they're doing, onto ourselves is like one of the Jedi ninja jujitsu moves here that is really hard and ultimately really important. Now, that doesn't mean you don't bring things to your partner. That doesn't mean you're not going to be hurt by your partner. That doesn't mean you don't make requests. I don't mean to say that. But as much as you can, coming back to yourself, where is this hurting me? What can I do? What request do I need to make of my partner to support me in growing up here? The better.
We've spent a good amount of time talking about the connection in the relationship. What about disconnection? How are relationships today, and what are you seeing on a regular basis of these relationships that are feeling lonelier than ever? What are some of the things that come to your mind when you think of the things that are disconnecting people more today, and why they're in relationships, maybe even healthy relationships, that just feel lonely?
I don't think we talk enough about relational loneliness. Like part of what we think about when we think about loneliness is people who are isolated and don't have friends, family, partnerships. But I'll tell you, like, I mean, I imagine for a lot of your listeners, the idea of going to bed next to your partner and being in a fight and that kind of silent scream that's happening in your body, that feeling of my partner doesn't get it. I'm in this by myself. I don't know if they're ever going to get it. I mean, that's relational loneliness. And part of how that kind of evolves is that all of the sudden, listen, these are loneliness happens over long term progression. So these are micro things that happen. I think part of what we're dealing with right now is that we have a culture where phones they're like a
Yeah.
third pillar
That's
in our
that
relationships.
that's what I was leaning towards in my question and building up, because I
Mm.
feel like people will think they're in the room with, they're like, I'm with you all the time, yet they're not with you all the time. They're with their phone all the time. And you hear this all the time, especially nowadays in marriages. I feel like getting together with other couples, this is something that comes up all the time where people are like, "Oh my God, the relationship with the phone is deeper than the relationship with me." And that's
Yeah.
a feeling that I think, and that goes both ways. That's not, I don't know that that's dominant on one, that it's really a wide open arena, because it's kind of an addiction.
I wouldn't say kind of. I think it's fully an addiction, and it's a way we numb, it's a way we avoid, um, it's a way we, quote, unquote, "take care of ourselves" when
Regulate, as you
we're
said earlier.
right?
Yeah.
That totally, totally, when we're in a fight, and the tricky part about what makes this so pervasive is that most of the disconnection is happening in the subtle, micro, mundane moments that are daily micro ruptures and not massive. To your point, we're in a conversation and we're at dinner, we're in the middle of a conversation. You just check your phone, just like out of habit. And maybe you put it right back down. Or you both get into bed and the last thing you do before going to bed is let me just check the news really quickly. I'm just going to scroll for 5 minutes, but then scrolling's meant to keep you. So you're 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, and the last thing you do before bed is not actually kiss your partner goodnight or have sex. Last thing you're doing is being in a relationship with your phone. And this becomes the norm in our family culture, right? All of a sudden but it doesn't have to be the phone. This could be the culture in your family or your relational dynamic that doesn't bring things up, that is like, I would rather not rock the boat. And so I'm just going to hold this thing that's not that big of a deal. You know, they came home late again. They made a comment that was a little snarky, but I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to bring anything up. It doesn't go that well when I do. And so I'm just going to shove it on the rug. And then one thing, two things, three things later, all of a sudden that is a huge rug. That's like dust mites that are, s- your size big underneath the rug. Now you're shifting from, you're shifting from us to me. I'm just going to deal with this by myself. It's easier if I just do that. If I just like deal with this on my own. Your curiosity then drops. I don't really want to ask my partner how they're doing today because you're kind of hurt inside too. So you're just like, I'm just not that invested. I don't feel that interested. Um, Self-editing starts, right? This like, again, like I could say this, but it's right before bed. Do I really want to bring something up right before bed? I'm not going to do that. Like, and then you get busy and you forget about it, for quote unquote forget, but it lives in your nervous system. Um, Meaning making then starts to sneak in. All of a sudden, oh, they did that once. Now they did that twice. Now they were on their phone three. And it's all of a sudden they're doing something they don't even know they're doing. And now you're making a web of stories about what that thing means. Now, most of that is about how they don't love, that could be about they don't love you, you're not hot anymore, they're not attracted. That could be about them. Oh, they've just gotten kind of angry in their old age, whatever it is. Now we've just started to weave an entire narrative without ever bringing them into it. Um, so you're together, but you're not with. And those are very different things. To your point of like, we spend a lot of time together, but we're not actually here with each other. those are two very different things. Spending quality time and actually being like the couple who every night after work, they get home, they're tired, and what do? They put on a movie. Well, it's time together. Is it quality time together? I don't know. I'm not here to I don't maybe. Maybe you two are like laughing at the characters and making fun of people or whatever it is. And actually it's quite engaging. And that is quality time for you. Or maybe you're both watching a movie and while you're both watching the movie, you're scrolling on your phones. Is that connection? Is that, I mean, you're spending time together. Is that intimate? No. Um, it's the point, disconnection starts to become kind of invasive when reacting to something, bringing something forward feels riskier than just dealing with it on your own. This is this is like food for disconnection. It's like a breeding ground for disconnection. It's too scary to bring the thing up. I've now gone along with it for years in some examples. What am I going to do? Just all of a sudden start saying something? But the answer is yes. The problem with the answer, though, is that a lot of us don't know how to say something without triggering our partners, which is why we didn't bring it up in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and one that I think could be we could dive deeper and deeper on is feeling lonely in a healthy relationship, and how to get back to the healthy version that you want. Because it's difficult when you bring up the phone. It's difficult because so many people, especially this next generation, like there'll be 4 or 5 kids all in a room together and they're all hanging out and they're all on their phones. Like this is the way they communicate. When I was growing up, we were all in a room together. We were fully engaged with each other. There was we might have been distracted with other things, but we had to be all in with each other. And so there is a loneliness even amongst your friends in relationships, which can be challenging. And I think you'll the one good thing is anytime something becomes a pervasive problem like this, it starts to become something where people start to recognize it. You're starting to see apps pop up on phones to shut your phone off at certain times. And you're hearing people talk about the addiction, and people will start to turn away from it in a way that really dynamically creates better time. I always love it when the phone doesn't work. I mean, I'll be honest. It's funny because it almost does the work for you. You go to a place and you're in Hawaii at a hotel, and the phone is like spotty in your room, and it's like liberating. And so for me, it's liberating, and I'm on my phone a lot. So, but I try not to be when I'm in my home environment. So, I think we could probably dive deep on lots of these things. Tell everybody how they find more of you, your guidance, your advice, and what's next in your world.
Mm. Well, I share a lot of specific repair tools on Instagram at Baya Voce, Bayavoce. And I'm launching something I'm calling the Repair Lab, which is monthly Q&As with me where you can anonymously or not bring questions to me and we will troubleshoot what's actually going on and how to repair. And then I've also created a Baya AI, and so you can literally ask while you're in the middle of a fight, like, what do I do? How do I say this? And the AI will help you. I find that one of the trickiest parts in conflict is that maybe you're seeing a therapist, but you don't see them until next week. And so you're like, what am I going to do? Just sit and stew in this until next week? And so often we don't have the answers when we need them most. And that's what Bay AI is for. So that is also part of the repair lab. And then I'll be launching courses. I'll be launching, there's just like a library of tools. So I'm really excited to launch that. That's brand new. I don't know when this will come out, but as of now, I'm just launching it for founding members. And then by the end of January, I'll be launching it publicly. So that's really exciting. Um, so I would say those two, the
Yeah.
Repair Lab and bayavoce.com. You can find Bayavoce is where the Repair Lab will live for now. And you can also find me on Instagram.
Well, I love the AI because at the end of the day, we all know that we're willing to type something into our computer, oftentimes that we aren't willing to say out loud or in
Totally.
public. And so the reality is, you could actually ask a question of the AI that you may not ask face to face because you're embarrassed or uncomfortable or disappointed in yourself. Like, these are all things that
Yeah.
definitely can help. And I think any tool, this is a great example of how AI is a good resource when used in the right way. So I think that's awesome. So everybody should definitely take a look at Baya's Instagram, follow her, listen to her TEDx talk on loneliness and rituals. I think it's a great conversation, and I've enjoyed the conversation. We could have taken this a lot longer. I may have to pick it up another time, and we're rooting for you in your next chapter. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.